I lost my memory, and during that time, I loved Victoria with all my heart. To save her, I almost lost my life in the water. But in that fleeting moment when I was close to death, I overheard her talking to her first love on the phone. I only love you. He's just a backup. Miraculously, I was saved and brought to the ICU. It was there, lying in that sterile, suffocating room, that a memory returned to me. Before I lost my memory, my heart had belonged to Victoria's sister. Later, I got married, holding the hand of the one I truly loved. Victoria, with tear-streaked cheeks, came to me and begged, "Please, can you lose your memory one more time?" Chapter 1. I thought I would never wake up again. The river was icy cold in the autumn, biting against my skin. I stood on the bank, shouting for Victoria to come back to the shore, but she refused to listen. Determined, she trudged further into the water, as if she sought nothing less than death itself. Panicked, I tore off my jacket and shoes and plunged into the water, forgetting that I was never a strong swimmer. Driven by sheer will, I fought the current and reached her side, grabbing hold of her and dragging her toward the shore. With every ounce of strength I had left, I pushed her up onto the bank, but when it came time for me to climb out, I realized I had no strength left, not even an ounce. And Victoria, she didn't even glance at me. Instead, she reached for her phone lying on the grass. Her trembling lips called out the name that had haunted me for years. "Justin, do you not care about me at all? I jumped into the river, and you still wouldn't come." She didn't notice that I was sinking beneath the surface. I was too exhausted to even call for help. A sharp pain lanced through my chest, as if someone had plunged a knife into me and twisted it mercilessly. For 3 years, I gave Victoria everything I could. Everything. All that was left to give was my life. But the moment Justin returned to the country, Victoria forgot all about me completely. It was as if she were the one who had lost her memory, not me. As I sank deeper, I saw her fingers tap on the phone screen. I thought she might finally be calling for help. But no, she answered a call. Tears streamed down her face as she said, "Justin, I only love you. No one else compares to you. Eric was just someone to fill the gap while you were away. I've always been waiting for you to come back." Even as I descended into the depths, I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. Foolish woman. If he truly cared about you, would he have disappeared overseas for 3 years without a single word? He's just playing with you, holding you in the palm of his hand, and the one who truly loved you. You've played him to death. Chapter 2. I am the only son of the Song family, the sole heir. 3 years ago, I hit my head in an accident and lost my memory. Since then, I've been hopelessly in love with Victoria. Once, Helen called me while drunk and asked, "Are you under some kind of spell? If you are, just tell me. I'll find a master to help break it for you." I hung up on her without responding because that night, Victoria was drunk, and I had to pick her up. When I rushed to get her, I found Victoria with tear-streaked eyes. Standing next to her was a man. He gave me a cold nod before hailing a cab and leaving. Victoria chased after the cab, calling his name, "Justin." I froze for a moment. I knew who Justin was, Victoria's first love, the one she could never let go of. He had left for another country without a word, and now he was back, blaming Victoria for not waiting for him and for being with me instead. Victoria squatted down on the sidewalk, covering her face as tears streamed through her fingers. I had never seen Victoria cry like this before. Whenever we argued, she'd just smirk coldly and ignore me for an entire day until I couldn't take it anymore and made peace with her. But this time, she cried so hard it was heart-wrenching. That night, I brought Victoria home and handed her a warm towel. "Victoria, if you really love Justin, I'll step aside." Victoria sobbed for a long time before falling asleep from exhaustion. She didn't say a word. I thought, maybe she realized I was her real boyfriend now. Maybe she felt reluctant to let me go, even just a little. It wasn't until later that I learned she hadn't even heard me. She was just crying too hard to notice. Chapter 3. In the end, I didn't drown. Victoria finally remembered me and screamed for help. A few elderly fishermen heard her cries and pulled me out of the water. By the time I was rescued, I was unconscious and rushed to the ICU. In truth, I wasn't entirely unconscious. I was aware but paralyzed. Like a vegetative state. I could hear everything but couldn't move. I heard Victoria frantically shouting my name beside me. "Eric, Eric, you're going to be okay, right?" She cried harder than I'd ever seen before. "Why did you go into the water when you can't even swim? Why?" I even heard her pleading with the doctors. "Please save him. He can't die." Victoria's desperation left me utterly confused. Wasn't she just professing her love to Justin? Hadn't she already decided to leave me? Why the sudden change? Then, I heard another familiar voice, trembling with anger as it confronted Victoria. "You said you'd treasure Eric, didn't you? This is what you call treasuring him." It was Helen. Ever since I asked her to help me plan my proposal to Victoria, she had blocked me and disappeared from my life. Now, she was running alongside my stretcher, her voice cracking with emotion. "Eric, wake up. You told me half a sentence 3 years ago, I've been waiting for the other half ever since. Wake up. I was exhausted. Darkness crept in, and I felt as though I was slipping into eternal night. But before the darkness fully consumed me, I couldn't help but wonder, what half a sentence? What was she talking about? I couldn't remember anything. Losing my memory really was troublesome. Chapter 4. My love for Victoria was simple. One day, I saw her wearing a beige dress, sitting in the Wang family's garden and painting. The sunlight streamed over her, the breeze gently rustling her hair. It was a picture of pure serenity. That scene struck me deeply. My heart told me I was in love with a girl in a beige dress, painting under the sun, and I had been in love with her for a long time. I had lost my memory, but I convinced myself that the girl was Victoria. From that moment on, I started pursuing her relentlessly. I showered her with the newest designer dresses and rare, luxurious jewelry as if money were no object. When Victoria craved fried cakes, I drove to the neighboring city and queued for 2 hours to buy her the most authentic ones. Because of her weak health, I learned to make soups and congee, painstakingly adjusting recipes to nurture her body. When she had insomnia, I searched for the best traditional Chinese medicine practitioners, learning so much along the way that I became an amateur expert myself. I believed I had done everything I could. Yet, Victoria was never truly happy. I could tell, her smiles were forced, strained. Then Justin came back. On the very night of his return, Victoria's 3-year struggle with insomnia disappeared without a trace. She even dreamed that night, and whatever it was, it made her lips curl into a soft, joyful smile. Watching her sleep so peacefully, smiling like that, I suddenly craved a cigarette. I had quit smoking because Victoria disliked the smell. That night, however, I went downstairs to the convenience store, bought a pack, and smoked 2 before heading back up. After Justin's return, Helen tried to caution me. You should spend more time with your sister, go shopping, watch a movie or 2, she suggested vaguely. She didn't say it outright, but I knew she was worried about Victoria rekindling her old flame with Justin. I appreciated her concern. This girl, ever since I confessed to Victoria, had taken up drinking, smoking, and riding motorbikes. People said Helen used to be so well behaved. No one understood what had changed. Even now, despite seeing her with cigarettes and alcohol, I couldn't help but think she was still a good girl at heart. And here she was, worrying about me, while trying not to hurt my pride. Her kindness warmed me, and I smiled at her. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. But it was just to reassure her. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. Victoria started coming home later and later. At first, she'd come back for dinner. Then, she began bringing takeout and eating late. Eventually, she started arriving in the early hours of the morning, cold air clinging to her. She claimed she was working overtime, bringing her laptop home, saying the Wang family business was keeping her busy. But the excitement in her eyes was impossible to miss. I've worked late before, there's nothing exciting about it. Yet, I pressed my lips together and said nothing. Victoria grew colder toward me. At home, we barely exchanged 10 words a day. Even when I asked her directly, she wouldn't open up. Sometimes, I couldn't help but wonder. We'd had good times together, hadn't we? Victoria used to crawl into my arms on cold nights, asking me to warm her icy hands and feet. She'd weep at romantic movies, sniffle through her tears, and tell me she wanted us to stay like this forever. We even locked a love padlock together at the temple, her arm wrapped around mine, her expression one of sincere devotion. How could it all change overnight? How did she turn into someone I no longer recognized? I couldn't understand. Chapter 5. I'm a stubborn person. Once I set my heart on someone, it's hard for me to let go. Even when Victoria stopped coming home or answering my calls, I continued tending to what had become a home for just me. Helen, on occasion, couldn't stand it. She'd argue with Victoria, but it never helped. Victoria would call me afterward and say, Eric, don't do things that make me look down on you. Don't take advantage of my sister. At first, I tried to explain myself, but one day, Victoria lost her temper and shouted, Do you think these cheap tricks will make me forget about Justin? Dream on. It was early autumn. A gust of wind swept through, chilling me to the bone. I froze in place. After a long pause, Victoria cleared her throat and awkwardly muttered, That's not what I meant. I lowered my head and chuckled bitterly. Victoria, I don't need you to stay with me. If you don't love me, let's end this. Just say the word, and I'll agree. Victoria remained silent. I waited for a while before sighing. Then let me say it. Victoria, let's break up. I may be stubborn, but I'm not unreasonable. A forced relationship isn't worth it. Yet, that day, Victoria said nothing. I thought she'd be happy when I suggested breaking up. Instead, she hung up in silence. A few days later, she called me again. Drunk and slurring her words, she said, Let me think about it. Okay, I sighed. Think about what? I need to think. She insisted. I thought I knew what mattered most, but now I'm not so sure. I shook my head. Victoria, I'm done waiting. I had endured enough lonely nights, sitting in silence, watching the dawn break through the window. Victoria, let's break up, I said calmly, putting an end to our forced relationship. But Victoria didn't respond. She just hung up again. The next day, she sent me a text message with a picture of her bedroom. I'd been staying at home these past few days. Helen chimed in to back her up. My sister's been home every night. I've been dragging her back after 10 p.m. if I have to. Helen's pouty indignation made me smile. It's not necessary, Helen, but thank you. The breakup was final for me. But Victoria didn't seem to think so. She started texting and calling me constantly, acting as if nothing had happened. She even began calling me husband, the same word she once refused to say, even when I begged her, now rolled off her tongue with ease. I didn't reply to any of her messages or calls, but that didn't mean I wasn't hurting. If, in the 3 years we'd been together, even 6 months had been like this, I might not have had the heart to say goodbye. My mind kept returning to that image of the girl in the beige dress, painting under the sunlight. That scene replayed in my memory like a spell that reminded me, over and over, of how deeply I loved her, even as I felt like a fool. Sometimes, in the quiet of the night, I allowed myself to imagine, what if Victoria really could change? Wouldn't that be wonderful? But it was just a fleeting dream. When Justin left the country again in a fit of anger, everything fell apart. His departure terrified Victoria. She thought he might disappear for another 3 years. She chased after him, only to be shut out. When she returned, she didn't contact me again, until one drunken night, she sent me a location with a message. Justin, I know you're back. If you don't meet me, I'll jump into the river. I knew she had sent it to the wrong person, but I saw the selfie she attached, standing by the riverside in the sunlight, wearing a simple beige dress. Her eyes were as innocent and doe-like as ever. The image blurred with a shadowy figure in my mind. I closed my eyes. I admit it, I'm pathetic. I'm still in love with the girl in the beige dress. So I went to the location she sent, pulled Victoria out of the water, and ended up in the ICU myself. I was unconscious in the ICU for many days, roughly half a month. During that time, I had a dream. In the dream, a girl with doe-like eyes filled with tears looked at me and said, "How could you not recognize me?" In the dream, I was stunned. Suddenly, I remembered. The girl I had always loved, the one in the beige dress, wasn't Victoria. Chapter 6. It was Helen. I suddenly remembered that I had been in love with Helen for 2 years. The day I lost my memory, I had been planning to confess to her. That day, she wore a beige dress and painted under the sunlight. Her fair skin, simple features, and pure smile were like a spring flowing with clarity. But she never got to hear my confession. Instead, she watched me take her sister's hand. I remembered the look in her doe-like eyes as she saw me with Victoria, how they shifted from disappointment to despair, how she fought back tears and forced a smile to wish us well. My girl, how had she endured these past 3 years? Tears slipped from the corners of my eyes. The nurse noticed and excitedly called for the doctor. "Doctor, the patient is waking up." Yes, I had woken up. The real me had woken up. When I was transferred to the VIP ward, I saw Victoria waiting outside the ICU. Her hair was tied messily, her dress wrinkled, and her eyes were swollen and bloodshot. Her face was pale as a sheet. The moment she saw me, she staggered forward, tears streaming down her face. "Eric, you scared me to death." A nearby nurse sighed with admiration. "You two must have a strong bond. This lady hasn't slept in nearly 3 days, staying by your side in the ICU. Before, I might have been deeply moved, but now, my eyes drifted past Victoria to someone else. Behind her stood Helen. She was just as disheveled and tired, her eyes just as red. Tears shimmered as she looked at me and said, "Don't do anything dangerous like that again." Sniffling, she added, "If something happened to you, Her words broke off abruptly, and she lowered her head. Victoria escorted me to the VIP ward, bustling about, arranging everything for me, but I stopped her. "Victoria, could you ask Helen to come in?" Victoria froze for a moment, then hesitantly called Helen into the room. I looked at Helen. She had changed over the past 3 years. Her shoulder-length hair had been cut into a short bob, and her flowy dresses had been replaced by leather jackets and jeans. But her eyes, they hadn't changed. Still as innocent and doe-like as ever, shimmering with tears in the sunlight. I closed my eyes, suppressing the ache in my chest, and beckoned Helen closer. When she was near enough that I could see the delicate texture of her flawless skin, I spoke with a trembling voice, barely holding back the lump in my throat. "Helen, I'm sorry." "Helen, I remember now." Helen froze, her eyes wide. The next second, she covered her mouth and began to sob. Her cries were quiet but filled with deep-seated grief, the kind of pain only someone deeply wounded could feel. I felt my own tears well up. I had promised to give her the greatest happiness. Instead, I made her watch me love someone else for 3 long years. Chapter 7. Victoria never really understood her sister's life. For all these years, Her energy had been consumed by Justin. She had no idea that Helen and I had developed feelings for each other years ago, nor that I had once intended to confess to Helen. Victoria stared blankly as I apologized to Helen and watched Helen burst into tears. She listened in silence as I explained everything in a few words. Her face grew paler, her breathing uneven. When I finished, her body swayed, her nose and eyes red as she stammered. "So, these 3 years with me were just a mistake. You got the wrong person." I paused for a moment before nodding. "If you want to put it that way, then yes." Victoria staggered again, looking between me and Helen. Her tears fell in heavy drops. "You bastard. Eric," she choked out. Her lips trembled as she sobbed. "How could you tell me that the 3 years we spent together were just a mistake, just as I finally sorted out my feelings for you?" I said nothing. Honestly, I struggled to understand Victoria's reaction. She didn't love me anymore. Why did it matter so much to her now? Helen shook her head at me. "Eric, it's been 3 years. You and my sister have built something together. I don't want to hurt her." But I didn't respond to Helen. Instead, I looked at Victoria and asked, "When I pulled you out of the water and started sinking myself, you were still on the phone with Justin. As I sank, you were telling him you couldn't live without him." I wasn't angry or disappointed anymore, just puzzled. "Victoria, were you out of your mind? You watched me drown with your own eyes, and now you're acting like you care so deeply about me." Pulling the blanket over myself, I said softly, "Please stop. I'm not used to this." Victoria's face turned even paler. She opened her mouth as if to explain but couldn't say a word. After all, these were things she had actually done. Helen, however, began crying again. She stepped in front of me, blocking Victoria's view, and said through her tears, "Sister, I didn't want to say anything, but you've gone too far with Eric." Helen's voice cracked as she continued. "How could you stab him in the heart after he risked his life to save you? Do you even remember? When we were kids, Eric saved you once before." Victoria froze. So did I. I had no idea what Helen was talking about. Helen wiped her tears and said furiously, "Back when we were being followed by traffickers, Eric was visiting us. He trailed them despite the danger and shouted for help in the middle of the market." Helen grabbed my hand, her voice trembling. "Because of that, Eric got slashed by one of the traffickers. He still has a scar on his hand. And you forgot all about it and treated him like this." Helen was sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. As for me, I lay there, thinking about her words. It took a long time before the memory surfaced. The pain from that injury had been so intense that my brain must have blocked it out. If no one had mentioned it, I might never have remembered. Victoria seemed to recall it too. Her face grew even paler as she leaned against the wall and said in a voice laced with despair, "Eric, I forgot. Her body slid down the wall as she cried. "How could I forget?" Helen bent down and gently hugged me. "You can forget, but I'll always remember for you." Chapter 8. I was discharged from the hospital soon after. Helen and I had wasted 3 long years. Now, I didn't want to waste another second. I decided to take Helen to meet our families. The first stop was the Wong family. Helen's parents were overjoyed to see me. Since we came from the same business circle, they knew me well and were delighted by the prospect of Helen and me being together. But Victoria was there too. She kept her head down the entire time, not saying a single word. She sat silently as Helen's parents praised how well Helen and I suited each other and began discussing the details of our future wedding. It wasn't until I was about to leave that Victoria stood up, offering to walk me out. She followed me to the door and out past the ornate iron gates of the Wong estate. Under the dim glow of the streetlights, Victoria's pale face was illuminated, and I finally understood why she had kept her head down. Her eyes were swollen and red, as though she had been crying for days. Even now, after regaining my memory and remembering who I truly loved, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of sadness as I looked at her. Victoria sniffled, her nose red, and looked at me with tear-filled eyes so much like Helen's. She asked in a trembling voice, "Eric, we were together for 3 years, and you never once introduced me to your parents." Quiet tears fell onto her pale feet as she added, "But you've been with Helen for only a few days, and now you've already brought her here." I sighed. Of course, I felt conflicted. Back then, I had begged Victoria to let me meet her parents, to make our relationship official. I wanted us to have a proper identity as a couple, but Victoria always smiled, kissed me, and changed the subject. Not once did she take my request seriously. For 3 whole years, no one except the 4 of us, me, her, Justin, and Helen, knew about our relationship. How ridiculous. 3 years of love, with only 4 witnesses. Meanwhile, her feelings for Justin were common knowledge, known to everyone, including both our families. I sighed again. "Victoria, for 3 years, you never wanted anyone to know about me. Have you forgotten? It was never me who didn't want to meet your parents." Victoria froze. Tears fell like broken pearls, streaming down her face. "In the past, Seeing her like this would have made me forget my anger. I would have convinced myself that she was my woman and that I needed to cherish her. No matter how upset I was, I would have wrapped her in my arms and comforted her. But now, I looked at the glowing lights of the Wang estate, where Helen was waiting for me. Warmth filled my heart. I waved at Victoria. Go back inside. It's cold out. Don't catch a cold. As I turned to leave, Victoria called out desperately. Eric. Her voice was filled with anguish and pleading as she said, I miss you. Eric. I didn't respond. I walked away. Chapter 9. Helen and I got engaged soon after. After wasting 3 years, I wasn't going to delay any longer. At our engagement party, Helen wore a long dress again. Her hair fell softly over her shoulders, and she smiled at me with crescent-shaped eyes, her gaze filled with nothing but me. The party was small, with only close family and friends in attendance. Everyone beamed at us with joy, except for Victoria. She drank glass after glass of wine until she was thoroughly drunk. After the party, Helen drove our parents home, while I stayed to escort the more intoxicated guests. When everyone else had left, Victoria was still drinking. I didn't know how much she had consumed, but it reminded me of the time Justin left the country again. Back then, she had drunk heavily as well, only to return to our room in the middle of the night, wrapping her arms around me and whispering, I'm sorry. The next day, she had chased after Justin overseas. This time, however, as she drank, she muttered my name instead of his. When I approached her, Victoria wobbled to her feet and asked, Eric, did you come for me? Her eyes lit up for a moment, reminiscent of the day I confessed to her. They sparkled like stars, but those stars had never shone for me. Victoria stumbled toward me in her high heels, falling to the ground with a heavy thud as her knees hit the floor. She froze for a moment, tears welling up in her eyes. Reaching out a hand, she looked at me like a child and said, Eric, it hurts. In the past, even a minor bump would have her running to me, whining. Eric, it hurts. Blow on it for me. But with Justin, she would endure countless wounds without uttering a word. Now, she reached for me again. Eric, it hurts. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she pleaded. Eric, take care of me. Please, take care of me. I watched her small, quiet sobs, like a child abandoned, but I simply stepped back and called a waitress over. Please help this lady up and escort her to the car I ordered. I walked out, instructed the driver to take her home safely, and made a note of the license plate number. I wasn't doing this for Victoria, it was for Helen. As the car pulled away, Victoria lowered the window, pointing to her chest. Eric, it hurts here. Tears filled her eyes as she said, it's been hurting for days. Nothing helps. Eric, what should I do? I saw the despair in her eyes. What can I do to stop the pain? Eric, I shook my head. Maybe go to a good hospital and have it checked. I'm not a doctor, but I know what it feels like to lie awake at night, staring at an empty bed, clutching your chest because it hurts so much you can't stand up straight. Even now, with Helen in my life, I can't forget those days. Days when I gave my heart, only to get nothing in return. So Victoria, if you're hurting now, you deserve it. You betrayed sincerity. Did you think there'd be no consequences? Chapter 10. After getting engaged to Helen, I returned to my previous work rhythm. I used to be a workaholic, but during the 3 years I was with Victoria, it felt like a cloud of gloom hung over me. I was constantly anxious, despondent, and completely out of touch with my former self. Now, with Helen's steady presence and shared passion for her career, I felt grounded. Being with her gave me the freedom to focus on building a future for us. But what I didn't expect was Victoria showing up at my company. She didn't just show up, she passed the interview and got hired. More than that, she was a highly recommended candidate from HR. I knew Victoria was well-educated, intelligent, and capable of excelling if she genuinely wanted to, but I didn't understand why she would bypass opportunities with her own family business just to work here. Frustrated, I called her into my office for a private conversation. Victoria arrived wearing a formal suit, a style I'd never seen on her before. Her hair was tied up, and she stood in front of me, looking thinner and paler than ever. I got in through the official interview process. You can't fire me, she said firmly. Her voice carried a trace of defiance, but her eyes betrayed an intense desperation. Eric, she pleaded, her tears beginning to fall. I've never begged anyone for anything before. I've always loved and cared for my sister, but I can't let you go. I can't. Her shoulders shook as she sobbed into her hands. How could I have pushed you away like that? How could I only now realize that the person I love is you? I rubbed my temples, feeling a pang of sadness, not for her, but for the past, for everything I had endured. Clearing my throat, I said, Victoria, there's no future for us. Standing, I handed her a tissue. There never will be. Let's not waste any more time. You're Helen's sister, and we'll inevitably cross paths. Let's maintain some dignity for both of us. Victoria wavered, her body trembling. You're saying I'm undignified? She asked, her eyes red and filled with disbelief. I shook my head. Her tears fell faster as she wiped them away with her hand. But Eric, don't you think you're at fault too? Her voice trembled with accusation. Didn't you use me to fill the void when you couldn't remember who you loved? You can't deny it, can you? I lowered my eyes, looking at the hand that held the tissue. This hand had patted her back and lulled her to sleep countless times. It had offered her water and hangover remedies whenever she drank too much. It had held her tightly during cold winter nights, sweltering summer afternoons, and every moment when thoughts of Justin left her sad and vulnerable. I took a deep breath, raised my head, and looked directly at her. Victoria, can you say, with a clear conscience, that I ever used you? Can you honestly say that my feelings for you, all the love and care I gave, meant nothing to you? You're the one who was on the phone with Justin while I was drowning. You're the one who left me behind to chase after him as soon as he called. You're the one who treated me like trash when I treated you like treasure. I took another deep breath, steadying myself. Victoria, there's a price for breaking someone's heart, a price for trampling on genuine love. Victoria stopped crying. Her face turned ashen as she opened and closed her mouth, finally managing to ask in a trembling voice, "Can't I make it up to you? Can't I make amends?" I opened the office door and motioned for her to leave. There's no need. Victoria, it's over. You need to understand what over truly means. Victoria stumbled toward the door, pausing with each step. As she reached the threshold, she turned back, tears still streaming down her face. Justin called me, she said with a bittersweet smile. He said he's leaving the country again, but this time, I didn't beg him to stay. I just told him to leave if that's what he wanted. Tears mingled with her smile as she added, "You see, I can leave him behind. I know it was you who stayed by my side for those 3 years, not him." I closed my eyes, cutting her off. Victoria, my love for you is already dead. It drowned in that river. I forced a small smile, and you were the one who pushed it under. Don't you remember? Victoria froze, staring at me blankly. A moment later, she covered her mouth with her hand, turned, and ran out of the office, sobbing. Chapter 11. Victoria never appeared again, until the night before my wedding to Helen, when she showed up drunk and rang my doorbell. When I opened the door, she suddenly threw herself into my arms, clutching my shirt tightly. Startled, I pushed her away. Victoria smiled at me, a sad and bittersweet smile. "Eric, if I hit you hard enough with something, do you think you'd lose your memory again?" I instinctively took a step back, wary. Her laughter grew louder. "Relax, no matter what. I'm still Helen's sister. I won't ruin her wedding." She gazed at me with regret, her eyes welling up with tears. "Eric, can you lose your memory again, please?" Closing her eyes tightly, she whispered, "Eric, it hurts. It really hurts. Please." A couple of tears fell silently to the ground. Choking on her words, Victoria said, "Once the wedding happens tomorrow, there's no going back, right? I'll never be able to lean on your shoulder again, will I?" I nodded. "That's right." Victoria opened her eyes and looked at me closely, as if trying to etch my face into her memory. She smiled faintly. "Eric, why can't I just forget about you?" She waved at me and said softly, "Goodbye, Eric." After taking a few steps, she stopped, her back still to me, and spoke with a smile in her voice. "You used to ask me to call you husband, but I never wanted to. Eric, just this once, can I call you that?" She turned back to face me, tears glistening in the moonlight as she said it. "Husband." I watched her silhouette disappear into the night, feeling a dampness in the corners of my eyes, but I knew it wasn't me crying. It was the remnants of a love long dead, buried beneath the cold waters of that river. It mourned the affection it had never been cherished for, lamenting the belated realization of its worth, long after it had ceased to exist. The day of my wedding to Helen was a grand and beautiful affair. Helen looked stunning in her white mermaid wedding gown, radiating joy and grace. As I stood on the stage, listening to the MC recount our love story and watching the slideshow of our shared memories, I felt nothing but gratitude. Grateful to fate for waking me up in time. Grateful for leading me to the person I truly loved. Helen clutched my hand tightly, her eyes red and brimming with tears, crying like a little rabbit. I wrapped her in my arms, comforting her, but my gaze drifted unconsciously to the audience below. There, at the main table, sat Victoria. She wore a beige dress, her long hair cascading over her shoulders. Her smile was radiant, yet tears silently streamed down her face. Someone asked her why she was crying so much. Victoria wiped her tears and smiled at me. "Nothing. I'm just so envious of my sister. She has the best husband in the world." Chapter 12. Time flew by like a fleeting horse. Helen and I unknowingly journeyed through 12 years together. Our careers flourished, and we were blessed with a son and a daughter. Life was peaceful and fulfilling. As for Victoria, she left the country the day after our wedding. She stayed abroad for over a decade. Each time she returned, it was brief and hurried, and I hadn't seen her in over 10 years. That was until this year, when Helen underwent a minor surgery. Victoria returned to visit, and we met in Helen's hospital room. She was still as thin and pale as ever. Dressed in a beige dress, she greeted me quietly. "Long time no see." I teased her. "You really love beige dresses, don't you? How many do you own?" Victoria opened her mouth as if to respond but lowered her eyes instead, saying nothing. She only offered a faint, bitter smile. From her bag, she took out a small gift box. "I run a studio in Italy now. I carved this myself." Opening the box, I found a pair of figurines, a man resembling me and a woman resembling Helen, sitting peacefully together. Victoria cleared her throat. "I didn't have any photos of you two at hand while carving, so I had to rely on memory. I hope you like it." Helen and I nodded enthusiastically. "It's beautiful. You captured us perfectly." Victoria smiled softly. "I'm glad you like it." She walked over to Helen, gently brushing her hair. "Think of it as my blessing. I wish you both a lifetime of love and happiness." After a pause, she added quietly, "And to always treasure each other." Helen nodded with a warm smile. As I placed the gift aside, I asked, "Victoria, I heard you're still single. Haven't found anyone yet?" She glanced at me briefly before shifting her gaze to the bright sky outside the window. After a moment, she smiled faintly. "No, I haven't. Being alone suits me just fine." She let out a self-deprecating laugh. "My standards are too high. I keep hoping to find someone who would risk their life for me, but I haven't met anyone like that again." Helen offered her a few words of comfort before growing tired and falling asleep. Victoria stood to leave, and I walked her out. As we stepped outside the hospital and onto the lawn, the sun shone brightly, casting a warm glow over her beige dress. A gentle breeze played with her hair, and for a moment, I saw the girl from years ago, painting under the sunlight. But now, the girl smiled with a calm grace. "That's enough. Eric, go back inside." I nodded and turned to leave, but just as I took my first step, I heard her quiet, wistful voice behind me. "I miss you so much." It was so soft it felt like she was talking to herself. Why can't the world turn back time? I paused but didn't look back. Ahead of me were my wife and children. Behind me was a solitary figure mourning a love that had long since died. Love doesn't resurrect, and feelings can't rewind. We can only keep moving forward, accepting the justice of what we sow and reap in love. Facing the sunlight, I strode forward toward the woman I loved, never looking back again. In the middle of the night, I got a call from my father-in-law. He said my mother-in-law was in a car accident and told me to hurry to the hospital with money. I quickly turned to Willow and said, "Mom was in a crash, and we don't have any money at home. We'll have to use your bride price funds first." The moment my wife heard that, she got upset. She shot back, "No way. It's your mom who got hurt. So why should you touch my bride price? Can't you borrow from your relatives?" I looked at her in shock, not expecting her to say such a thing. I said, "It's a matter of life and death, and you're worried about your bride price." She rolled her eyes and snapped, "Then give me an IOU, and no matter how much you use, you'll pay it all back to me later." I was stunned. Chapter 1. The bride price was originally paid by my family, and now it's going to save her own mother. Why should I have to pay her back? My wife looked deadly serious. She ignored the fact that every second counted, ran into the study, grabbed some paper and a pen, and insisted in earnest, "Write it down. Say that today you're borrowing my money to pay for her treatment and promise to return it." I said helplessly, "She's our mom. Can't you just stop this nonsense?" My wife cut me off, agitated. "Can you stop making a scene? The bride price from your family is my financial security. Now something happens, and you immediately want to dip into my security money. What if you never pay me back? If you really cared about me, you'd borrow from someone else instead of touching my bride price right from the start." I couldn't understand it at all, so I tried to reason with her again. "You're not even willing to save Mom. How can you be so heartless?" She gave me a wounded look, and tears started spilling down her cheeks. She sobbed, "So you're starting with moral blackmail now? Huh? From the beginning, you compared a life and death situation to my bride price, forcing me to choose one or the other. You have so many relatives you could borrow from, or you could just give me an IOU." I was shaking with anger. "Why should I write you an IOU?" My wife grew more agitated. "Then have Dad write one. He's a grown man. Why should a daughter-in-law's bride price pay for his wife's treatment?" I forced myself to stay calm and said, "Fine, you write one first. Once we get to the hospital, I'll have Dad sign and stamp it." Only then did my wife nod in satisfaction. She started drafting the IOU, but at that moment, my father-in-law suddenly called again. I figured he was urging us to get to the hospital as soon as possible. When I answered, my father-in-law sounded frantic. "Where's the money? Transfer a few $1,000s to me right now." I turned around to my wife. "Time is critical. Can you make the transfer first? I remember you saved up a bit of money, didn't you?" She got upset at once. "No way. I won't transfer a cent until the IOU is signed. What if he doesn't pay me back later?" My father-in-law went silent on the other end. He asked, dumbfounded, "Is that my daughter talking? Pay you back for what? What's she talking about?" I answered honestly. Dad, don't get mad. She's writing an IOU because she's worried you won't pay her back afterward. He couldn't believe it. She's still writing an IOU at a time like this. I told him that we'd transfer the money once he signed the IOU. All of a sudden, my father-in-law lost it. His voice trembled and turned shrill. He shouted, "She's a heartless beast." He was so loud that my wife heard him on my end. She stopped writing, stormed over, grabbed my phone, and roared, "Who are you calling a beast? You shameless old fool. You can't even afford your wife's hospital bill, and now you're cursing me. I'm not lending you anything." With that, she smashed my phone onto the ground. I quickly picked it up, only to see the screen was cracked and had gone black. It wouldn't turn on no matter what I tried. My wife was trembling all over with rage. She spat. That old man dared to curse at me, screeching like a eunuch. How disgusting. Just then, her own phone rang. On the screen, the caller ID showed Dad, just like how I labeled her father in my own phone. My wife picked up the phone and sneered, calling again to insult me. Huh? She rejected the call, then said coldly to me, "He was the first to hurl insults. I'm not lending anything now. Go ask your relatives for money. Don't touch my bride price." In despair, I said, "How can you refuse to help? As a child, seeing your parent in mortal danger and not rescuing them, that's practically illegal." She snapped, "Don't try to scare me with the law. We just had a wedding banquet. We haven't even registered our marriage certificate yet. The law doesn't apply to me. And let me tell you this, if you push me too far, I'll break up with you right now. And I'm not returning the bride price either." I gasped. "You know this is your own mother we're talking about, not mine." She paused in disbelief, then gave a chilly laugh. "You're trying to trick me so I'll pay, aren't you? If it were really my mom, would my dad call me a beast?" I had no time to deal with her nonsense. I knew her bank card's password, so I grabbed it and dashed for the door. But my wife panicked. She lunged to snatch the card back. When I wouldn't let go, she bent down and sank her teeth into my arm. The pain was excruciating, so I had to let go of the card. She bit down so hard that she left a bloody imprint on my arm, clutching my wound. I watched her retreat to a corner, clutching the bank card, eyes brimming with hatred. Noticing my fury, she gritted her teeth. "You're actually trying to forcefully grab my bride price just to save your own mother, aren't you? If it were truly my mother in trouble, would you be this desperate? All along, she actually thought it was my parents who were in the accident, not hers." I said, "If you don't believe me, call your parents and ask them yourself." She scoffed. "Do you think I'm stupid? You want me to call them so you can guilt-trip me together? You are not allowed to tell them about this." With that, she suddenly grabbed a pair of scissors and held them against the bank card. I shouted urgently, "No." Chapter 2. My wife eyed me warily. I said anxiously, "Listen, that bank card was opened just to hold your bride price. We set it up together at the bank, and I haven't even linked it to mobile banking yet. If you cut it up, we won't be able to use the money tonight." She glared at me coldly. Maybe I should cut it up. When that old fool called me a heartless beast, he should have known I'm not someone who just stands by and lets people insult me. I broke down. "That was your dad." Willow wore a crazed look on her face and shouted, "He's your dad, not mine. He's just a shameless old man who can't even pay his wife's medical bills and then flips out on me. And you're both scheming together to cheat me out of my bride price." She really meant it. Right in front of my eyes, she cut the bank card in half. Watching our last hope get destroyed, I collapsed onto the couch, drained of all energy. "It's over," I murmured in a daze. "Everything's over." She gave a derisive snort. "Go to the hospital and see your mom by yourself." "I'm not going. Besides, what are you so worried about? By law, doctors have to attempt to save a patient." I answered helplessly. "Doctors will keep her alive, sure, but only with the most basic care. Without money, we can't decide which meds or equipment they use, nor can we pay for continued treatment. She could be saved now, only to face disability or worse in a few days." My wife shrugged, unconcerned. "Then why are you still standing here? Go borrow money from your own relatives." "Oh, right. I'm not registering our marriage with you anymore." I froze. She wasn't planning to get our marriage certificate, yet she wanted me to borrow money to save her own mother. I asked, "Why won't you get the certificate?" She replied, "Who knows how much it'll cost to save that old lady? It could be a bottomless pit. Debts fall on both spouses once we're legally married, and I don't plan to ruin my entire life just to cover her bills. I'd rather cut my losses and not marry you at all." I was devastated. "I don't get it. Spending money to save your mother would ruin your entire life." Willow approached me and said earnestly, "Listen, Mom's already up in years. Wouldn't it be better if she just went peacefully?" Stunned, I could only stare. "Willow, do you even realize what you're saying?" She insisted, "Don't blame me for being heartless. Let's do the math. If a car accident is bad enough to need critical care, it could cost hundreds of thousands. How are we supposed to afford kids in the future if we blow our savings on that old woman's treatment? You're not even thinking about buying a home in a decent school district." I hesitated. What pushed me over the edge was the next thing she said. Let's be honest. If the medical bills go over $300,000, I'm divorcing you. In fact, since we haven't registered yet, we can just break it off right now. Her words hit me like a punch. Spending $300,000 to save my mother-in-law, only to end up divorced. I'd be left with a massive debt and no family. What would I have left then? Just then, her phone buzzed again. Apparently, my father-in-law couldn't reach her by calling, so he started sending texts. He was furious and his words were filthy. He raged. You ungrateful wretch. You just got $300,000 from the bride price, yet you refuse to save your mom. You're worse than a pig or a dog, an absolute beast. And I'm supposed to sign an IOU for my own wife's treatment. Transfer the money right now, or I swear I'll come after you. Willow let out a sigh. She didn't open the texts. Instead, she showed me the notifications on her screen and said, "See how he's insulting me, threatening me." I said, "Dad's just out of his mind with worry." She shook her head. "Stop calling him Dad. Starting right now. He's just a disgusting old man to me." I realized I couldn't talk to her anymore. My father-in-law was clearly desperate. This was a matter of life and death. So I picked up her phone and asked, "Can I call our relatives and friends to borrow some money?" She replied, "Go ahead. But like I said, we're not legally married yet, so this wouldn't be a shared marital debt. If it's too big a loan, neither of us should have to drag the other down. We'll just split up peacefully." I nodded. Scrolling through her contacts, I found her best friend's number. Just as I was about to dial, Willow spotted the name in the phone's contact list. She snatched the phone away and demanded, "Who are you calling for money?" "Your friend," I said. Her face turned scarlet with anger. "Are you out of your mind? Why would you ask my friend for money? Don't you have your own relatives or buddies?" I told her honestly, "You smashed my phone, so I can't call any of my people. I only have access to your contacts." She fumed. "You really are a piece of trash." I stared at her in disbelief. Here was someone refusing to save her own mother, yet she had the nerve to call me trash. She continued raging, "Your mom's about to die, and you want to drag my friends into it for money? It's your family's crisis, don't dump it on other people." I tried to reason with her. "Stop being unreasonable. Your mom is waiting for you to help save her life." Willow sneered. "Wow, you've really got it all planned out, don't you?" I couldn't fathom what she meant by that. Chapter 3. My wife continued, "I see exactly what you're doing. You know I won't fork over my bride price, so you want me to borrow money from my relatives and friends. Then, when you refuse to pay them back, I'd have no choice but to use my bride price to settle the debt. Isn't that right?" I replied. "Isn't it obvious? Why should I pay your relatives back? You said yourself the bride price is your security fund. If there was ever a time to use it, it's now." She yelled, "Stop spouting nonsense. That money is my security, it belongs to me alone." In her fury, she suddenly opened WeChat and sent a voice message to her family group chat. Because she was so angry, her voice was shaking as she spoke. "Listen up, everyone. If my husband tries to borrow money from any of you for that old woman's surgery, do not lend him a single penny. I'm telling you right now, I won't pay it back. I don't care if that old hag lives or dies." Messages popped up in the group almost immediately. Someone who appeared to be her uncle typed in shock, "Are you even human?" My wife snapped back, "Uncle, you don't know the whole story, so don't jump to conclusions. Do you know he tried to use my bride price to pay for medical bills?" Her uncle was even more stunned. "Then use the bride price. This is a matter of life and death. How can you be worrying about the money?" She was furious. "Why should I spend my bride price? Show you some respect by calling you uncle, but if not for that, you're nobody. This is my money. When did you get to decide how it's used?" Since she was the group admin, she immediately kicked her uncle out of the group. Right then, my father-in-law sent another text. It flashed across the top of the phone's screen. "I'm coming to your new place to get the money. You heartless beast. I swear I'd rather kill you myself." My wife was in the middle of booting people from the group, and when she saw that message, she was livid. She swiped at the notification, without actually opening the text, and dialed the police straight away. While she was on the phone, she turned to me and said, "You see what he wrote, right? He threatened to kill me. I'm reporting that old man to the police right now." Panicking, I pleaded, "Willow, don't call the police. Dad's just out of his mind with worry. Mom's still in the hospital. If you get him arrested, who's going to take care of her?" She gave a frosty laugh. "Don't bother pleading for him. You're disgusting. I can see exactly what kind of person you are. You'd rather see your wife mistreated than stand up for her. Marrying you was the biggest mistake of my life." Outraged, I asked, "When did I ever mistreat you?" She growled, "First you tried to take my bride price, then you wanted me to borrow money from my relatives, forcing me to use my bride price for the debt. Now I'm being threatened, and you don't want me to call the police. Haven't I been through enough?" Her voice rose and spit flew onto my face. At that moment, the call connected. She quickly said, "Hello, I'd like to report a threat. Someone said he's coming to my home to kill me. Please send officers right away." She gave them our address, and the operator told her, "Officers have been dispatched. Lock your doors and keep safe until they arrive." My wife hung up and sneered, "I'm not locking anything. I want him to pay." Shocked, I asked, "What are you planning to do?" She answered, "Didn't you see how he just threatened me? I'm going to let that old man try to hit me, and when the cops show up, I'll get a medical examination and send him straight to prison." I stared in disbelief. "You're out of your mind. You actually want to send our dad to jail?" Chapter 4. She was even more agitated now, shouting at me, "You're the one who's crazy. Didn't I tell you to stop calling him our dad? He is not my father. He's been cursing me, and you still won't take my side. I regret marrying you. I'll never register our marriage, and I'm not returning the bride price. If you don't like it, go sue me in court." I stared at this hysterical woman, unable to believe she could behave like this, and yet, for some reason, I felt a strange sense of relief that it wasn't my own mother lying in that hospital bed tonight. I could only imagine how much worse things might be if it were. I gritted my teeth and said, "Fine. First thing tomorrow morning, I'm filing with the court to freeze that bride price until you pay it back." Willow gave a cold laugh. "That's hilarious." "Sure. Go ahead and freeze it. Meanwhile, your dear old lady is lying there in the hospital. Your entire family's only hope is locked up in a frozen account. I can't wait to see that happen." I couldn't understand what she found so funny, but after tonight, I'd seen her true colors. I was determined not to marry such a person, nor would I shoulder her debts. Fortunately, I knew a lawyer from before. When we'd been preparing for marriage, Willow forced me to sign a prenuptial agreement and even had a lawyer act as a third party. According to the agreement, once we were legally married, all of her assets would remain hers alone, while half of my property would belong to her. I grabbed her phone and called our lawyer. I explained that he already had our information and asked him to prepare an urgent application to the court, requesting an immediate property freeze. I planned to submit it first thing in the morning so we could freeze the funds as quickly as possible. Seeing that I was serious, Willow sat to the side and jeered, "Yeah, go on and freeze it. It's still better than letting you use it to save your mother." "Absolutely priceless," I snapped. "It's your mother who's dying." From my perspective, since she'd given up on getting legally married to me, her mother was no longer my responsibility, either. My wife went ballistic. She pointed at my face and said, "Watch your mouth. Your own family member is dying. Don't you go cursing my mother." She still couldn't grasp that her own mother was the one in the accident. I said bluntly, "It's your mom who's on her deathbed." Willow hollered, "I'll rip that filthy mouth of yours right off." In a rage, she lunged at me. I was about to tell her that it really was her mother in the accident, but she grabbed my face and started yanking. She even tried to shove her phone into my mouth, hissing through clenched teeth, "So you want to spew garbage about other people dying? My mom never did anything to you." I couldn't speak because my mouth was full of phone, and she managed to smack me several times in the face. Never in my life had my own parents laid a hand on me. Fury surged inside me, especially after she'd made it clear she had no intention of returning my bride price. I lost control. I grabbed her by the hair and landed 2 solid punches on her face. She staggered back a few steps, dazed, almost losing her balance. Staring in disbelief, she said, "You actually hit me." I retorted, "You attacked me first. Why can't I hit back?" She screeched, "I'll fight you to the death. Go on. Hit me harder. Cover me in bruises so I can send you straight to prison." She flung herself at me, sobbing hysterically, even though she clearly wasn't a match for me physically. Every time she tried to scratch my face with her nails, I just pushed her off, and she'd tumble backward, landing on the floor. Realizing she couldn't beat me, she started spewing vile curses at me, more and more vicious by the second. "I hope your mother dies. I hope she's the one lying on the operating table tonight, dying in the worst, most agonizing way. It's her own fault for raising such a worthless man like you. Serves you right if she dies." I responded icily, "It's your mother who's really dying." She shrieked, "Don't you dare curse my mom." Chapter 5. She flew into another rage and came at me again, screaming at the top of her lungs. In her desperation, she even snatched the fruit knife off the coffee table and charged at me with it. I slapped her across the face, leaving her momentarily stunned. Then I grabbed her wrist and gave it a hard twist. The difference in strength was too great. She cried out in pain and dropped the knife. Realizing she couldn't beat me, she started screaming curses. "Your mother's dead. She's going to die tonight. Tomorrow I'm opening champagne to celebrate." I'd had enough of her insanity. I grabbed her by the head and shoved her face under the faucet in the kitchen sink, turning on the water to wash out that foul mouth of hers. She couldn't breathe, her head pinned under the running water, coughing and crying. In a chilling voice, I asked, "Have you insulted me enough? Do you realize that the selfish one here is you? Even if it really were my mother in that hospital bed, real spouses help each other's parents." She spat out a mouthful of water and glared at me. "You're the selfish one. If my mom were in the hospital right now, I'd never demand money from you, and I wouldn't drag your family down." I frowned. "Do you honestly expect me to believe that?" She grew more agitated. True spouses don't burden each other. You're a selfish monster. You only care about grabbing my money. If today my mom had been in the accident, I would have thought about you. But you haven't thought about me at all. I nodded. Fine. Make sure you remember that. Just then, I noticed a familiar car pulling into the complex, right underneath our window. It was my father-in-law's car. At the sight of it, Willow immediately shouted, "You're finished. My dad's here. You're so done for." I glanced down and confirmed that it really was my father-in-law stepping out of the car. He looked up at us, and Willow opened the window. Gritting his teeth, he growled, "Come down here so we can talk." Willow, though, wanted him to come upstairs and teach me a lesson. She yelled back, "You come up here." There was no doubt in my father-in-law's mind that this was an act of provocation. His face darkened with anger, and he headed into the building in a hurry. Willow let out a sigh of relief, evidently emboldened by her father's arrival. She shoved me aside and screamed through her tears, "My dad must have seen what happened in the group chat. So he rushed over here because he was worried about me. You're done for. He's going to beat you to death." I hadn't expected him to show up so quickly. My mother-in-law was still in the hospital, in critical condition. For him to abandon the operating room and rush here meant he was beyond furious. Maybe that was for the best. At least I wouldn't need to deal with all of this by myself. Willow, still oblivious to the trouble she'd brought on herself, pushed me aside and made for the door. She was crafty enough not to let me off easily. On her way out, she threw or smashed anything she could get her hands on, vases on the coffee table, the shoe cabinet by the entrance, until the whole place looked like a war zone. She was clearly trying to stage a scene of severe domestic violence. She even tousled her own hair to look like she'd been beaten to a pulp. Then she turned back to me and said coldly, "You're done for. You never should have messed with a girl who has a dad. I'll make you pay." She opened the door and actually knelt down in the hallway. I could hear the elevator coming up. My father-in-law was on his way. As the elevator approached our floor, she started wailing, loud enough for anyone inside to hear. When the doors opened, he stepped out, face grim as thunder. Willow spotted him and instantly cried out, "Dad, he hit me. All because I wouldn't hand over my bride price to save that dead old hag." That one sentence, calling my mother-in-law a dead old hag, was all it took for my father-in-law's hands to curl into fists. Chapter 6. My wife kept on sobbing, "I want a divorce. I refuse to give him what he wants. I'd rather have the money frozen by the court than let him use it to pay for the medical bills. I want that old hag to stay on her hospital bed, feeling the despair before she dies." My father-in-law was still thinking clearly enough to know that saving a life came first. Ignoring his daughter's complaints, he bit back his anger and turned to me. "Where's the bank card with the bride price?" I shrugged and answered honestly, "I tried to grab it and head to the hospital, but your daughter stopped me. She cut the card in half, and since it wasn't linked to mobile banking, there's no way to use that money tonight." Hearing this, my father-in-law strode forward with increasing speed. My wife pointed at me, tears still streaming down her face, and said, "I managed to snatch the card from him and cut it up." She wanted to keep accusing me, but my father-in-law couldn't hold back anymore. He lifted his foot and kicked her square in her tear-stained face. Caught off guard, never in her wildest dreams did she think her own father would strike her. She landed face first on the ground with a hard thud. She turned back, clutching her face, staring at him in shock and terror. Why would you hit me?" she stammered. He roared, "Your mother is lying in the operating room between life and death, waiting on money to save her, and here you are, acting like a heartless traitor. Tell me, do you deserve this beating or not?" Panicking, she cried out, "But it's his mom, not mine. Why should I care?" I said coldly, "I've told you countless times, it's your mother who was in the accident." She froze. Her voice shook as she turned back to her dad. "You mean my mom was in the crash? My real mom is on the operating table." Wait. She hurriedly grabbed her phone and opened up the message notifications. Before, she'd only seen the sender's name in the contact display, but if she tapped the text itself, the phone number would appear. She asked in a dazed voice, "Was this you texting me all along?" Her father raised his hand and slapped her hard across the face again. "If it wasn't me, who else would it be? A ghost?" Covering her face, she turned to me and sobbed, "The calls at the beginning, that was my dad too." I answered, "It was always him. I told you over and over." My father-in-law cut me off, still fuming, and said to my wife, "I asked you for money. Why didn't you hand it over? I'm here, ready to sign any IOU you want. Where's the money now?" She wailed in desperation, "I don't have it. I cut up the card." "What do we do, Dad? Is the bank open now?" He was livid. He tackled her to the ground and raised his fists in anger, snarling, "It's the middle of the night. What bank is open at this hour?" She ignored the blows, bursting into tears. "I didn't know it was my real mom. If I'd known, I would have transferred the money right away." Maybe because things were so chaotic, none of us noticed the elevator had gone back down once already. Suddenly, It dinged again and opened. 2 police officers emerged, and the moment they saw my father-in-law hitting my wife, they pinned him down. Startled by the police's arrival, he exclaimed, "Who called the cops?" I answered, "Your daughter did." Instantly, his face went pale as ash. My wife broke down. "Dad, I didn't call them for you. I thought the person threatening me was my father-in-law." Then she turned and cast me a murderous look. Through clenched teeth, she hissed, "You scum. I'm not going to argue with you now. I'm rushing to the hospital. You'd better call every relative and friend you have and borrow as much as you can tomorrow. Take the bride price out of the bank, too." I asked, "Why?" She paused, then blurted, "My mom needs that money, why else?" I shrugged. "We've already decided not to get married. Why should I use my bride price to save your mom? Weren't you the one who said if it was your mom on the operating table, you'd never drag me down?" She stared at me, stunned. It was indeed something she'd said herself, but it seemed she'd forgotten it all too quickly. She asked in desperation, "What do you want, then? Do you want me to admit I was wrong? Fine, I'll apologize." "Okay." I laughed. To think she believed her apology was that precious. I shook my head. "I used to think marriage was about sticking together through thick and thin, until you showed me how wrong I was. The moment a parent needed help, your first instinct was to cut all ties. You have no right to touch my bride price." Hysterical, my wife begged the officers to release her father and turned to him, sobbing, "Dad, please say something. Mom's still waiting on us to save her." But he stood there, face flushed and unable to say a word. He understood perfectly what had happened here. Chapter 7. My father-in-law murmured, "Did you or did you not tell him, loud and clear, that if it were his mother in trouble, you'd make him sign an IOU for the money?" My wife wept. "I know I was wrong. I'll change from now on." "Dad, please say something." He gritted his teeth. "What can I possibly say? Anything we do or say right now will only disgrace us further." A deathly pallor settled over her face. I nodded. My father-in-law clearly understood how serious this was. Unfortunately, his family still had the misfortune of producing someone like her. He pushed his daughter aside and gave her a long look before trudging away, looking defeated, panicking. My wife cried, "Dad, aren't you going to take the money? What about Mom?" He spat through clenched teeth. "I'll borrow from relatives and friends if I have to. I'll mortgage my home. Don't call me Dad anymore." I never raised such a heartless beast. All at once, the mood grew unbearably tense. My wife stopped trying to accuse me in front of the police. Instead, she scrambled to her feet and grabbed my arm. "Give me the money, please. Just think of it as a loan. I swear I'll pay you back. My mother's dying." I asked coldly, "So my mother's life doesn't matter?" She fell apart. "You're a man. Can't you be magnanimous just this once?" I laughed. Weren't my actions at the start already generous enough? She stared at me in a daze, unable to find any words. In desperation, she ran back inside and grabbed the bank card she'd cut in two. She tried to patch it back together, hoping she could at least swipe it at the hospital. But of course, it was pointless. In her vicious rage, she'd cut clean through the chip. The only money she had left was the small sum in her personal savings, maybe 20,000 yuan total. For an urgent operation, that was a drop in the ocean. So she dashed outside, sobbing. The hospital would handle the bare minimum to keep her mother alive, but better equipment or medication, and any longer-term treatment, would cost real money. It was like someone with a severe heart condition getting taken to the hospital. They'd stabilize him, but there was no way the hospital itself would pay out of pocket for an expensive artificial heart. With the place now in shambles, only the police and I remained. I gave them a rundown of everything that had happened, and they were all pretty stunned. One of the officers patted me on the shoulder and sighed, telling me I deserved someone far better. After they left, I tidied up the apartment and called a locksmith. I had him change the locks right away. I also gathered all of my wife's belongings and put them outside. According to the prenup we'd signed, if we got legally married, half of my apartment would become hers. But since we never finalized the marriage certificate, and she declared she never would, she no longer had any right to set foot in this place. Sure enough, switching the locks was the right call. Not long after I'd finished cleaning, I heard a key fumbling in the lock. Soon, my wife realized she couldn't get in. She started banging on the door, crying, "Honey, I've already used up my savings. The doctor just told us about the next round of treatment costs. Please, help me." I tried to withdraw the money without a bank card at the ATM, but it only let me take out 20,000. "I'm going insane," I said calmly. "You're really something, you know that. After I told you I wouldn't give you a cent, you still went and tried to take out the 20,000. Don't you recall promising that if it was your mother in the hospital, you'd never drag me down? Get ready to see me in court." She broke down sobbing. "I've got no other way. I can only swallow my pride and beg you. What will it take for you to forgive me?" I just sighed. She had brought this all on herself, especially by cutting up the bank card. Had she not done that, She might have rushed to the hospital and paid the bills before the lawyer or the court could freeze the funds. Another option would have been to go to the bank tomorrow with the damaged card and withdraw money at the counter, but it wouldn't matter. We live in a small county with few bank branches, and I've already alerted my mom, outraged by what happened. She'll be leading her gang of senior friends on a stakeout at every bank in town by morning. The moment my wife shows up to withdraw funds, she'll learn just how effectively a group of old ladies can raise a ruckus, and how quickly a bank can decide not to release any money. I sneered at the door. When you believed it was my mother in that hospital bed, you basically wanted her to die. That's the same as trying to kill my mother with your bare hands. From this day on, we're finished, there's no going back. She sobbed. You're really going to abandon me? Cut off all ties between us? Is that what you've choice? Her wailing continued outside, but I couldn't be bothered to listen anymore. I put on my headphones. My choice, right now, it's definitely Mastery. The enemy team picked 5 champions without any reliable crowd control, perfect conditions for E to run wild. Chapter 8. I lay on the sofa with no one to bother me, happily gaming until 2 in the morning before finally putting down my phone. It struck me how carefree my life used to be. Originally, I had taken some vacation time off for the wedding, and now these days were completely mine. Taking advantage of my time off, I stayed up past 2 without feeling sleepy. Once I was certain my wife wasn't outside the door, I ordered some late-night barbecue and took a beer from the fridge. Sitting at the table, enjoying my food, I couldn't help remembering how tight money used to be when I was saving for the bride price. Yet here I was, freely treating myself to games and barbecue. It almost felt like fate had given me a second chance. Although I was quite comfortable, my wife was having a miserable time. She had kicked her uncle out of the family chat and then had to go begging him for money. All while word was spreading about how she'd refused to pay for her own mother's treatment. Everyone was calling her an ungrateful wretch, heaping all sorts of nasty insults on her. She tried to explain herself, but it was pointless. Once she told her side of the story, people only learned that, believing it was my mother who needed urgent medical fees, she'd clung to her bride price like a lifeline. Her reputation was ruined beyond repair. By the next day, my lawyer had helped me file a lawsuit with the court. Given the urgency, the court swiftly froze the bank account. To save my mother-in-law, my father-in-law had no choice but to sell his house. He managed to secure her treatment in the end. The funniest part was that, once my mother-in-law found out what her daughter had done, her blood pressure nearly went through the roof. Furious, she kicked her out of the hospital room, saying she'd disgraced the whole family. The court proceedings went smoothly, and the judge ruled that the bride price should be returned in full. Judges are human, after all. With a backstory like this, my wife made a terrible impression. By the time we saw each other again at the courthouse, she looked as though she'd aged a dozen years. After the judge made the decision, she sobbed and asked me, "Now nobody wants me anymore. Everyone looks down on me. Are you satisfied? I know you did this on purpose. You ruined me so that, if I ever wanted to get back together, you could demand a free marriage with no bride price, right?" I stared at her, stunned. "Have you got a tumor in your brain?